Good afternoon, Mr. Credon, and thank you very much for joining me on the Sami Parvez show on this our weekly show.
Yes, here we are, early April,
Hmm.
snow on the ground,
Yep.
and we've got just over 2 weeks left to the federal election. So
Hmm.
let's talk election or whatever else you want to talk about.
Yeah. So election is our focus, but there was a huge rally in Edmonton. I think over 15,000 showed up. But as I was discussing earlier with my dad, he said there should be supposed to be 50,000. So what was that enough like to convince folks? It mean to vote for conservative as we are seeing. Like it seems like people are running away from the conservative is what polls are suggesting. So, is it the time that we would see like Tories will reclaim the victory, or like on the particularly on the election day?
I think this is Poilievre's time to fight back. I think he's largely doing the right thing. You mentioned the rally in Edmonton. I found that fascinating for a couple of reasons. First of all, because Stephen Harper was there to endorse Poilievre. No surprise there. I mean, who else? Who is he going to endorse? Mark Carney? And of course they were very close for many years. It was a poignant moment for me watching. I knew Stephen Harper very well when he was in government. More, I knew him better when he was in opposition than I did when he's in government,
Mm-hmm.
when he was prime minister. But I go back a long way with no no Stephen Harper. And he's sort of the grand old man now of the Conservative Party now that Brian Mulroney's gone. And of course, Joe Clark has never really been considered a conservative by any conservative. So Stephen Harper's the icon now, and I found it interesting that he gets on the stage, and if one of the first things he says is change. He
Mm-hmm.
says we have to talk about change, and of course that's what I have been saying now for 3 or 4 weeks. Polyev has got to start talking about change. Stop talking about Donald Trump, but he can't change Donald Trump. Let's put it that. And he can't do anything about Donald Trump. He needs to say that we're going to negotiate with Donald Trump when I'm prime minister. But Mark Carney has left a wreckage behind him. He's left this absolute garbage stream behind him of 10 years of the Trudeau government that he was intimately involved in. And I think Poilievre needs to continue to talk about that. The polls are gradually shifting. And
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I'm not one of these people who say, oh, the polls are all garbage.
Yep.
There's certainly, when all of the polls are indicating a liberal lead, I don't think you can say it's all askew. I think it might be a little bit inflated,
Mm-hmm.
but here's how Poilievre can win. Stick to change. So like Obama did in 2008, it works. People really are that peripheral, if you will. People really do respond to a very simple message, and I think it will work for Poilievre. The other reason I think he can win this is that I cannot see Mark Carney withdrawing from the English language debate. He might withdraw from the second French language debate. I can see him doing that, but he can't withdraw from the English language debate without looking like a complete coward, a totally craven politician. So I think he'll go in that debate and hope that he is totally eviscerated by Pierre Poilievre and people will have sympathy for him. I think that's the only hope he has. He's going
Mm-hmm.
to be destroyed in that debate. Poilievre is a superior debater, a superior speaker, and I don't see any way for Mark Carney to come out on top in that debate. And we know historically, lots of people, undecided voters, make the decision about who to vote for after they watch the leaders debating each
Yeah.
other.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Yeah.
look at American examples or Canadian examples. I think that's going to help all you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are absolutely right with respect to leaders debate. Like many people would choose who they need to vote after leaders debate. I think I need to ask you about something latest. Is Mark Carney, like Globe and Mail reported that Carney met with some Chinese descent, like particularly who are more connected with Chinese communist group, and he told this to Globe and Mail reporter, you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. It seems like what like Trudeau said at that time. Like the report. Uh, the Globe and Mail reported this morning it was false. It seems like he's saying the same thing, but everyone knew what happened back in 2019 during SNC Lavalin scandal. So what do you take from this? It seems like now he's accusing the media. If a conservative like Pierre Pouliot would say that, oh, so the mainstream media went on and like comparing Pierre Pouliot with Trump, who always says that mainstream media is a fake news.
This is another reason Poilievre can win this election is because the mainstream media is starting to report the facts about
Mm-hmm.
Mark Carney,
Yep.
that he is in China's pocket. He is China's man. He's been working with China surreptitiously and above ground for many, many years. The record is out there about things Carney has said about China. He wants China to lead the world. He wants the Chinese yuan to be the universal currency. He deals with China's central banks for loans, even while he's working for the prime minister's office. There's a problem with Mark Carney. There's a problem with his taxes. The fact that he sends his tax he doesn't pay taxes in Bermuda, and he expects every Canadian to pay taxes and every
Mm-hmm.
other corporation to pay taxes. There's
Yep.
a problem with Mark Carney, and it's one of hypocrisy and integrity. I see a complete lack of integrity in this man, and that's exactly what the liberals tried to sell Mark Carney as
Mm-hmm.
a man of integrity. He's been a banker. His all of his adult life, he's been associated with central banks. You can trust this man. I think a lot of Canadians initially said, "Well, I don't trust bankers. They're the ones
Mm-hmm.
who make most of the profits in this world."
Yep.
And why should I trust Mark Carney? And every day it's unraveling for Mark Carney. We find out more and more about his secret dealings
Mm-hmm.
as the Brookfield Assets Management chairman. We find out about what he really feels about China and why it's China strong, not Canada strong. So this does remind me of the Globe and Mail, Bob Fife, God bless him.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that came out with a lot of stories a year and a half, well, about a year ago now, about the CSIS whistleblower
Mm-hmm.
talking about Chinese interference.
Yes.
That might have been 2 years ago now. If it's 1 or 2 years,
Yep.
I can't recall. But it was the Globe that came out with that expose
Mm-hmm.
on Chinese interference in Canadian elections and how they might have bought two elections for Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, of course, came out and said it's all lies and don't believe. And, well, actually, what he said was, "Don't believe the media," and we're going to go after that whistleblower, by the way, and punish him
Yep.
for revealing this information. So
Yep.
huge contradiction. If it's not true,
Mm-hmm.
why are you going after a whistleblower?
Yep.
And obviously, the whistleblower was revealing factual information. So Carney, when a liberal starts to talk about fake news, it's a desperation time because they don't have to reach for that lever very often because most of the so-called fake news is on their side most of the time.
Yep.
The mainstream media is in their pocket. But I see a lot of, you can't say every journalist working for the mainstream media is in the pocket of the liberal government because
Mm-hmm.
there's still people of integrity. There's journalists of integrity working for CTV Global, even CBC.
Yep.
I've known many over the years who don't want to be a mouthpiece for
Mm-hmm.
Mark Carney. And if there's information out there that needs to be revealed, I think they've got enough moxie, guts, and integrity as reporters to get that information out. And I think that's exactly what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like as you were also saying, like in the polls after polls is showing that liberals are leading. Like now Abacus also like revealed yesterday, I believe it was revealed that now liberals are leading by I believe 6 points. It seems like
Six
the
points.
gap, yeah, the gap is increasing. So should like now a uh, conservative leader and his team should be concerned about these polls. And I don't know, like you saw that one or not. Like someone posted it on X that they a conservative supporter are holding a banner. Do you believe in the polls?
I speak to conservative supporters every day
Mm-hmm.
who just simply don't believe the polls. They think
Mm-hmm.
they're all lies. I know a lot of polling in this country is skewed because the questions generally favor a liberal response. And I have studied polling since I was in university. I think I know polling very well. I know it's contingent upon the questions you ask. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that accounts for some of it. But you can't be delusional about polls and say that every poll is a lie, every poll is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think something horrible happened when when Mark Carney announced he was going to run for the leadership. And a lot of Canadians were fooled by this. The Conservatives have to realize that they need to pull out all the stops. There is nothing that they can't do right now that is going to be counterproductive. Obviously they don't want to do anything outrageous or stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But Poilievre needs to really hammer Carney's record. He needs to remind people of what's out there, and he needs to tell people how corrupt and how completely lacking in integrity Carney has been over the years. And I think it's working. I think you're going to see the polls change, and over the next 2 weeks, I think it's going to be a win for Poilievre in the end, simply because of Carney's baggage, excess baggage, and because of the potential for a huge victory in the debate. And I think people are getting tired of Mark Carney. If the national media is getting tired of Mark Carney, and they are, they're
Mm-hmm.
getting tired of that evil eye he gives them every time they ask a question that's not a softball. And you notice that he gets you can just see he's on the verge of a temper tantrum
Yeah.
every time a reporter says, "What about the Bermuda? What about the money you've been putting in offshore havens? What about you not paying your taxes? And what about that trip to Beijing?" These are things you can't ask Mark Carney, but they're asking. So I think they're getting tired of Mark Carney. And the more we see of Mark Carney blowing his temper, the less we're going to like Mark Carney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like is with respect to media, it seems like Pierre Poulier is running away from the media, even though he mocked one reporter, called her like a protester. Do you think it was right to say that? And
So
and
I,
and I just sorry to interrupt you. And
the
also
Paul,
like, pardon me, sir.
go
Uh,
ahead.
so like it means during like press conference, like first of all, like he did not allow the protesters, pardon me, the media should be in his plane, like they need to, if they want to cover, they should come by themselves, unlike other leaders or campaigners. And so he's like allowing just one question for one reporter. He's not allowing a follow up. So don't you think it could create chaos? Like it seems like you're running away from the media for what you
Okay,
need
are you
to be able
talking
to.
Carney or Polyev running away? I missed the
Pierre
beginning there.
Polier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Polyev doesn't like the media. There's no question about
Mm-hmm,
that. He's very combative with the media. Sometimes it's very effective,
mm-hmm.
and supporters love it. I think about the time he was eating the apple, talking
Yeah.
to a local reporter in British
Mm-hmm.
Columbia. That was extremely effective.
Yeah.
And when he calls out stupid questions and he flips it on the reporter, that's effective. Looking arrogant during an election campaign by shutting the media out is not effective.
Yeah.
That's when he has to be open and accessible to the media. And it frustrates me. He's not open and accessible to media like you and I.
Yep.
He's not going on any podcasts. And he's been invited by a lot of Canadians, including myself, and including some of the biggest podcasters in the United States. And it's a flat no every time. This is a mistake. He can't afford to say no to all of these opportunities. And if he loses, and I don't think he will, I think he's going to scratch by. But if he loses, that will be one of the reasons is that he did not take advantage of media opportunities that were falling in his lap throughout this campaign. And I think he's not listening to the Jenny Burns of his campaign, these strategic advisors,
Mm.
as they like to call themselves. He's listening less and less to them because he's untethered by their control. You see him speaking his mind a lot more, but he's still listening to their advice about don't go on those small c conservative libertarian talk shows.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go on those podcasts because people will say you're far right or you're extreme. You can't do that. Just stick to the CBC and the CTV. And of course, Poilievre won't stick to the CBC. He hates them. So,
Mm-hmm.
so as you said, the ultimate consequence for Poilievre is limited media exposure.
Yeah.
He needs it now like he never needed it before. I don't think the media is going to pull a fast one on Poilievre because there's really nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say this with some confidence. There's nothing about Poilievre to expose, and there's nothing within his caucus to expose. So I don't think the media is going to spend the next 2 weeks doing a deep dive into Poilievre's past or his real conviction, his real beliefs, or bad people in his caucus. I don't think they're going to do that. He doesn't have the He doesn't have the luxury of saying no to the media right now. He needs as much media as he can possibly get. You can have 15,000 people in Edmonton and nobody will know about it except the 15,000 people who were there.
Yep.
If this doesn't get out on the in the in
Me.
the in the media. And actually that did because but he didn't really even want them there. If you saw some of those news reports, they were standing
Yeah.
outside saying we couldn't really get the information out, meaning we weren't allowed in. So they didn't want them there. So that's ridiculous. And I've been to Poilievre events, and there's a list this long about things you can and can't do as
Mm-hmm.
a reporter. You can't wander around talk to anybody. You can't really interview people that you want to interview. You've got to just basically stick to the script. And I said, the hell with that. If I go to an event, I'm just going to go as an individual, and then I'll be a reporter when I get there. I'm not going to go by your guidelines.
Yeah.
But that's what they're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's inexcusable right now. And once again, Poilievre is listening to some bad advice in
Poison.
his
Yep.
communications people.
Hmm. Now you wish me good luck that I'm going like there will be an event like later this evening at 6 o'clock. Here in region of Waterloo. Now wish me good luck. They should me
Oh, I
let
thought
me
you were going to say
there.
you have Pierre Poilievre on your show tonight. I said,
Yeah.
you're the lucky guy. Okay.
Oh boy, yeah, I don't know, like, but I'm going to speak with some folks to see what they would say. I know, like, I won't be able to talk with Pierre Poulier, but if I would, I have just one question: why doesn't talk about like MP Perez, though he's talking cutting the bureaucracy and other expenses, but not a single word since 2019. We did not hear that he said we don't want this Perez for these elite group you know
and
the
that'll be next question.
yeah. Yeah, that is my question to Pierre Poulier, but we will talk about like it mean like as you said like another thing we should always it mean to believe that whenever there will be a coverage by media, it seems like it means they are highlighting like giving you coverage to telling people what you are doing, particularly mainstream media. But it was a bad decision. Do you think should they revise their decision and let these mainstream media to be in their plans, like for Pierre Poulier?
Absolutely. Put up with it for 2 weeks. I keep saying this. He's got nothing to lose. And there's nothing the media is going to expose about Pierre Poilievre in the next 2 weeks that's going to be that devastating or and even disturbing. He needs to get the message out. There's a lot of Canadians are still not watching new media
Yep.
or watching shows like yours and mine. A lot of them are.
Yep.
But once again, why isn't he going on these shows then if his supporters are watching them?
Hmm.
But for the people who never watch YouTube, they're still watching CBC and CTV and Global, just like Justin Trudeau said we all should be doing. And they're still getting the same narrative, the same message that Mark Carney's way ahead. Mark Carney's the glamour boy from the UK. Mark Carney's the savior of the Liberal Party. Mark Carney's going to make Canada great again. And this is all of the nonsense the mainstream media has been feeding all of these people. Now, I think the narrative's changing, as I said, because I think the media is looking at themselves and saying, have we created a monster? Are we responsible for this guy taking over Canada? Because he really seems to have some bad problems here. There's a real integrity problems with Mark Carney. And I think some in the media are quietly behind closed doors meeting with each other and saying, hey, maybe we've done really something bad here for Canada. Maybe we have erred in the way we have interpreted Mark Carney for Canadians. Maybe we should be taking a closer look at who this man
Mhm.
really is.
Yep.
Because what do we know about Mark Carney? He exploded on the scene. He was a complete mystery. We didn't know his wife was friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, and that she and Maxwell, a Confederate of Jeffrey Epstein, was at the Carney farm. We didn't know that Mark Carney's wife was in Jeffrey Epstein's contact list. We didn't know about the speeches he's made about China being the world leader, replacing the United States. Did Donald Trump know that? I don't think so. Does Donald Trump know how in the pocket to China Mark Carney is? That he wants the United States to decline as a world power? He said that repeatedly. I don't think Donald Trump knows that, or he wouldn't be lauding Mark Carney as a man he can work with.
Hmm.
But I think there's all kinds of layers to that endorsement, and I can't get into all of that right now. But
Hmm.
I don't think we know Mark Carney. The media did not know Mark Carney. And the more they get to know him, the less they're liking him.
Hmm. Yep, you are right. But I will come to Donald Trump. But I need to ask you one more thing. Is earlier, like I always discuss with my dad about this politics. But he made a good point. Like Trudeau was a French, so maybe many people hated like English speaking. Like maybe they now hated him, or it mean he did not have a support like what Mark Carney is getting. Is Mark Carney is getting the support because he's in English Canadian?
Well, it amazes me he's getting any support at all in Quebec because the Liberal Party traditionally has insisted that their leader
Hmm.
be fluently bilingual.
Hmm.
In fact, they flipped from Anglo to Franco over the years. They've been doing that, I think, since the late 1800s. They flipped leaders from Anglo to Franco because they're very, very concerned about the equality of language in this country. And yet Mark Carney is he's an abominable in French. His French is terrible,
Yep.
and he's already said he won't do two French language debates. He might do one. And he really doesn't seem to be the ideal candidate for the Quebecois, but they seem to be supporting him in the numbers I would never have imagined. So I don't know why they're supporting him because he's even talking about pipelines right now. Of course, I don't believe a word he's saying. He's saying, yeah, maybe we should be building pipelines in Canada. Quebec doesn't want pipelines. So is there going to be a disconnect there? Is there a conflict there? Are Quebecers going to say, well, Mark Carney is going to be just as bad as Pierre Poilievre. He's going to build pipeline. So is there going to be a conflict there? He is creating so many disconnects every time he opens his mouth that I can't see anything but grief for him in the next 2.5 weeks as we get near the end of this campaign. And I don't know what he's doing with Donald Trump because Donald Trump, on the one hand, says they're on a first name basis. He just thinks he's a wonderful guy, and yet Carney's the only one threatening retaliatory tariffs. Besides, what's the other country? China.
Hmm.
It's only Canada and China who are threatening retaliatory tariffs, and we got off very lightly on that last one. You recall, we were expecting months ago now
Yep.
to get hit with a 25% tariff on all Canadian goods, all of them. That's never happened. And I don't think it will. I think it was all part of this game he's playing. And we've dealt with the steel and aluminum tariffs in the past.
Yep.
Even Justin Trudeau knew how to deal with that.
Hmm.
So we're not in a crisis anymore. There's not going to be a trade war. The Liberals still hope that people are afraid of a trade war, so they'll vote Liberal because Mark Carney has got Donald Trump under control. But that issue is really evaporated for them, and it's only Carney that's keeping it alive by saying, "Oh, retaliatory terror, retaliatory terror. We're gonna fight back," and it's all electioneering. There's no sincerity there, and I think if Mark Carney becomes an elected prime minister, he's going to cave to anything Trump suggests, and he's got no possible capacity to fight a trade war with the United States. But fortunately, I don't think we're going to have to fight one. And unfortunately, I don't think Mark Carney is going to be the prime minister who's going to have to deal with that.
Yep. Okay. So like yesterday, it was reported that like Trump also sent out a post on his truth, social truth. Like it means the tariffs are passed for next 90 days for all countries except Canada and China. So it seems like whoever like European Union and other countries reached out to Trump, but Canada did not. It seems like Carney wants like these tariffs should go on, and he will take advantage. Like as surveys are suggesting, like there was a report whenever Trump talks about tariffs, so liberals number goes up. So if there will not be any talk about tariffs, so it means the number does not change. So is like as I asked you like before, and like with respect to like these liberals always make these critical issues as a wage issue as they did with COVID and doing this tariff too. So sh- so is it just is intentionally doing it? Like not taking this tariff seriously and retaliating these tariffs on U.S. goods. So what's your take on it?
Carney is continuing to stoke the fires of a trade war.
Mm-hmm.
He wants this to be a crisis. Liberals love crises
Yeah.
because they exploit crises, whether it's COVID or whether it's trade war. They want to take our rights away because it's a crisis. That's what liberals are all about today. It's what the
Mm-hmm.
left is all about. Take your rights away because there's a crisis. There was a certain German leader who did the same thing in 1933. There was a crisis, the Reichstag burned down, and oh, you're all going to lose your rights because there's a crisis. And guess what? The crisis will go on for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how the liberals operate today. Create a crisis, exploit the crisis, use it politically, and specifically, if you can use it during an election, even better. There's going to be a trade crisis, a tariff crisis until April 29th with Mark Carney. Then
Yep.
it's going to be over. If
Mm-hmm.
Mark Carney wins this election, it's all going to be over on April 29th. And Mark Carney's going to say, hey, folks, I think I overreacted. There's no crisis. We're just going to acquiesce with whatever President Trump asked for. We're going to acquiesce because we don't have time for this. And I've got other things to do. I could write the script for Mark Carney. I know exactly what he's going to say before he says it. And that's what he's going to say. But I'll tell you what, he's not going to get the chance because I don't believe he's going to win re-election. Well, I can't even say that because he wasn't elected. Whatever you want to call it, he's not going to be elected as our prime minister. He's going to be remembered as an appointed prime minister, an installed prime minister, an unelected prime minister, but one who failed to get elected in his own right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. May your words come true. But like as you said, like I think you did a podcast on like now Pierre Poulier is listening. Like he's changing his tone. So what is he doing differently is what he did in the past.
What he's doing differently, two things. Talking less about Donald Trump and saying, we're going to hit hard. That is stupid talk, and it did not wash well. It didn't help with the liberals who think he's really privately in Donald Trump's pocket, and it hit hard with a conservative base who said, "Lay off Trump, just lay off the tariff thing. It's not helping any of us. We'll get through this." That's what Daniel Smith, for instance, Premier of Alberta, has been saying since day one. Just lay off. We'll deal with it. We can negotiate our way out of this. This is not a crisis. Don't lose your head. Poilievre is saying less about Trump and he's talking more about change, like I said at the beginning of the broadcast. He's also digging up some of the things he said in the last 4 years. Well, no, sorry, the last 3 years as official opposition leader that made him an effective speaker, that made Canadians want to vote for him. He talked about Canada being the freest country in the world. Now, that's what he needs to say every day. He needs to talk about the fact that he's not going to introduce an online harms act like Justin Trudeau to take away our free speech, to
Mm-hmm.
institute thought crimes. I'd like to hear him talk about eradicating or at least reducing our euthanasia program in this country. It's an outrage. Suicide capital of the world, Canada is. That's another legacy of Justin Trudeau. I want to hear Poilievre talk about that. That's a disgrace. He's talking about some good things right now. He's talking about like the corporate welfare bum thing, about Mark Carney being a grifter, a political grifter, not a real businessman. Brilliant. He is a political grifter. And he's somebody who abuses the system. Poilievre needs to say that again and again and again. And that appeals not just to conservative voters, that appeals to NDP voters
Mm-hmm.
who are deserting their party. Because that's the theme the NDP used to like to harp on, is the fact that big corporations didn't pay any taxes because they did it all offshore. I mean, Paul Martin was just as bad when his shipping company was paying all of his non wasn't paying taxes because it was an offshore haven. And this is something the left and the right can actually agree on, and I think it's a winning issue. And I also think Polyev, when he talks about drug consumption sites and he calls them drug dens, and I don't think he wants to eliminate them all, but he wants to move them away from, and he doesn't want to approve anymore, but he wants to move them away from schools and places where children are playing, which is good. And he's calling them what they are. They're not safe injection sites. There's nothing safe about heroin. Heroin is a deadly drug
Yep.
in any quantity. You can die tomorrow if you're a heroin addict. He's saying that these are drug consumption sites. He calls them drug dens, and this is not an answer to the drug addiction problem in Canada. It's not an answer to the opioid crisis. Treatment is, and I think that will go far with a lot of people. And when he talks about bail, for instance, and the fact that criminals should not be doing a revolving door,
Mm-hmm.
that appeals to a lot of middle class men and women who really feel the justice system has failed them.
Yep.
And I think that's key to Paulie of winning this. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what he's doing differently. He's talking good policy that unites left and right, and he's talking about freedom again. He's talking about safe streets, good jobs, pride in the country, a strong military. These are all key points for the base that needs to be energized and get out and vote on April 28th. But I also think it's attracting other people into the tent.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and also like Pierre Poulier is getting, as you said, like he's getting tough on crime. Like, but some experts are not satisfied with that. They said this is unconstitutional. Like three strikes out, it means you will serve your lifetime in prison. And so, what's your take on it? Like, is Pierre Poulier is talking about these issue? Do you think like people like Canadians are liking them?
Well, generally, the tough on crime is a pretty good issue. It transcends just the Conservative Party and attracts like blue liberals, if you will, even some NDPers who are traditional labor union types. And by the way, he's attracting a lot of labor union people, and that this is really unprecedented. And I think that could win this thing for him. But he should not be talking about three strikes and you're out. That is a stupid policy. It was a failed policy in the United States. Yeah, people are spending the rest of their life in prison because they had three offenses, and that's stupidity. Because we should be locking up murderers and rapists, not people who have three strikes on their record. That was an abominable policy in the United States. And by the way, Joe Biden introduced that policy
Wow.
with Bill Clinton. That was a failure. The three strikes you're out policy was a failure. It filled the prisons with people who shouldn't have been there for the length of time they were sentenced to. We need to put real criminals, the people who are doing the hard crimes, to hard time. That's what Poilievre needs to be emphasizing. And I think largely he does that. He does talk about the fact that we need real punishment for people who commit heinous crimes. And that, I think, is a winner, political winner with all political throughout the political spectrum.
Hmm. Yeah, and there was a report, and I'm also observing with respect to that. There were no talks on immigration. Like a report suggested, immigration was overshadowed by Trump and tariffs. So, what's your take? Like, if like Pierre Poulier would win, like, what would be his policy in terms of immigration, and with respect to Mark Carney? Should we expect the same policy what liberals had, like welcome to Canada, as Trudeau put out the tweet back in 2017 when Trump banned, like a few countries?
I think like everything Mark Carney's saying right now, that it's all geared towards telling people what they want to hear. during an election. I don't believe much of what he's saying. I look at Mark Carney's record. Mark Carney did not have a transformational experience on January 6th when Justin Trudeau announced that he would be resigning.
Mm.
That's the day Mark Carney said, "Hey, I'm going to take this job. I'm going to run. I'm going now." I didn't see any transformational experience with Mark Carney. When did he wake up and become a small C conservative? When did he wake up and say net zero, maybe, but not necessarily? Net zero when I'm in Ontario, but not net zero when I'm in Alberta. That's Mark Carney's take on net zero. Or pipelines. Well, when I'm in Alberta, build, build, build. When I'm in Ontario, we'll take a closer look at all of those. But it's Mark Carney is still a woke liberal. He's still an environmental extremist. He's still a globalist. He's still somebody who serves China. He serves the Chinese interests. He's still somebody who's not in any way could be confused with a fiscal conservative, and certainly not a social conservative. We don't hear much about his social views, by the way, except that he really has nothing to say
Mm.
to you about anything except the speech he's already read 15 times. So I don't we're learning much about Mark Carney from Mark Carney during this campaign, except that he will say anything that he thinks he needs to say. And he's stealing, I mean, you can see this. He's stealing policies every week from Pierre Poilievre. Except when Poilievre announces them, they're bad policies. But when Mark Carney announces them, they could be exactly the same, but they're good policies because the Liberal announced them. Now, if Canadians are that stupid, I hope not. But there are certain days I really think Canadians are that stupid. But
Mm.
this is Mark Carney's strategy: is take the best of Pierre Poilievre's policies that he thinks will appeal to a broad political spectrum, and run down Pierre Poilievre as a career politician who's never had a real job in his life. And I've had lots of real jobs, and of course that's nonsense. He's had jobs with the European elite, and he has worked for the United Nations, for the World Economic Forum. Those aren't real jobs. Don't make me laugh.
Mm.
People in those organizations don't know how to work. They don't know what a day's work is. And I don't think Mark Carney really knows what a hard day's work is. He's never really had to have one, perhaps since he was 18.
Hmm. Yeah, and so last question. So, in terms of like polls and your own observations and talking with conservative and like other Canadians, so what's your take or what's your prediction? How would we see on election night, like on April 28th? What would be the outcome? So I know, like you
Well,
said many times.
like I said, I'm going out on a limb. I've already said this morning. I think I said it yesterday too. I'm predicting a small conservative majority, not a minority. I think he's going to get a small majority, and a lot of people are saying it's impossible. It's impossible. No, it's not. Not in an election campaign like this. It's going to get increasingly frenetic, and it's going to get increasingly vocal in the next 2 weeks because Polyev realizes it's give it all or nothing, all or nothing at all. He as the song says, he has got to give it all right now, and I think you're going to see those polls flip by the end of April. By April 28th, I think those polls will have flipped. That's my prediction based on where I think the campaign is going. I could be if Polyev disappoints me, then I'm going to be totally wrong. If they stick to a safe script, if they keep going on about Donald Trump, if they don't hit Mark Carney as hard as possible, then I'm wrong. But I think if they continue to do what I've seen in the last few days to a week, I think they've got a fighting chance of taking this thing. And a minority won't do that. And I think Canadians almost realize that. Like conservative minority, it's going to be over in 6 months. It won't last because there's no way they're going to get the support of the Liberals or the NDP or the Bloc for enough period. If the Bloc even has enough seats in there anymore, or the NDP had, God knows what it's going to look like in
Mm.
terms of the opposition. But I think Canadians are going to have a sense that Poilievre needs a small majority. He's not going to get a large. He's not going to get the largest in history anymore. But I think he can still win this thing if
Mhm.
he plays it smart. I can't control that. I'm basing my prediction on what I see as a change in the campaign and a positive change. And if he continues to do that, I think he has a fighting chance of taking that small majority government and perhaps building on that in the next 4 years. But I'm not calling it quits on Pierre Paul. I'm not selling him short. I'm not saying he's going to lose this thing. There are some people out there who are really depressed about these numbers and are very fatalistic that it's over. We had our chance in January, we lost it, and now if we were dealing with Justin Trudeau, it would be a different story. But we're dealing with Mark Carney. I say that's a strength.
Yep.
I say dealing with Mark Carney is an asset for the Conservative Party because this guy has even more problems, even more holes in his history than Justin Trudeau did, and I think he's an easier target even than Justin Trudeau. The Conservative Party just needs to follow through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I said like that was the last question, but I still ask you one more question.
One
Like,
more, okay.
yeah. So like, if liberal change, like, as liberal change their leader, we know we like now seeing the numbers are changed. So if NDP changed their leader, were we expected something similar?
Well, I think Jagmeet Singh is totally past his due date. He
Mhm.
has been for a long time. I don't know what I don't know what he's still doing around for this election. He was an embarrassment for the past 2 or 3 years, especially the last 6 months. He was a complete embarrassment. Flip flopping every day about whether he supports Justin Trudeau or doesn't support Justin Trudeau. He kept Justin Trudeau in power long enough to destroy his own party because that's one of the legacies of Jagmeet Singh. He destroyed the NDP by allowing Justin Trudeau lots of time to consider resigning, lots of time to resign, bring in Mark Carney, and Mark Carney has had a very deleterious effect on the NDP numbers. They're down anywhere from 7 to 9%. It's almost political extinction for them. And that's Jagmeet Singh. Thank you, Jagmeet Singh. Yeah, I think the NDP might rise in the polls if they replace Jagmeet Singh,
Mhm.
but it entirely depends how bad things are on April 28th. This could be they could lose official party status. It's very, very likely.
Mhm.
And that makes a party really do some internal navel gazing. And this is a party you got to remember. It's been around since 1933. It started out as the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation Party, CCF. Changed its name in 1962 or three, I think, to the NDP. But it's been around for like 90 years
Mhm.
in one name or another. And Jagmeet Singh managed to almost destroy this party in the time he's been there. He's been probably the worst political leader in the history of our opposition parties,
Mhm.
and perhaps even worse than Justin Trudeau. I don't know, but I do think he has done a complete disaster job on his own party, and I don't know. I often wonder if it was intentional. He was pathetic. He was one of the worst political leaders I've ever watched, and this is his legacy. And I think there's a lot of NDP MPs out there right now who would love to spend 5 minutes alone with Jagmeet Singh. I don't know what would happen during that 5 minutes, but probably wouldn't be very good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Credon, for taking time. I know, like, you are very busy, particularly during this election. And do you have a last word to say?
Well, I would say this to people who say, Creighton, there's no way that the conservatives can win a slim majority. Well, you look at political campaigns over the past 50 years, happens all the time. In fact, it happened to a guy who just resigned. Justin Trudeau was way behind Stephen Harper in the 2015 election. He was in third place. He was in third place. He was behind the NDP at the time. They were in second place. He was a distant third place, and he won that election because he just kept on hammering away at the issues he believed in. And Harper totally misread the campaign. It was way too long, and he got very bad advice. It was his campaign to lose, and he lost it.
Mm.
But Justin Trudeau turned that campaign around, and so can Pierre Poilievre, because I think he's twice the man Justin Trudeau is, and I think he's got at least twice the expertise and the qualifications as Justin Trudeau could ever dream of. And yes, it's entirely possible. Politics is something that is incredibly easy to upset the cart overnight. And a day can be like 6 months in politics, and 2 weeks can be like 2 years. things can happen rapidly during a campaign. And don't sell the Conservative Party short in this because it can happen.
Okay. Thank you again, my friend David, for taking time to joining me on the Sami Parvez show. And see you next week. And until then, you please take a good care of yourself and have a good weekend.
You too, Sammy. Always a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
see you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye for now.
Bye.